Hello, you're right. It's Mrs. Hogan here. I thought I'd put together a little bit of an overview because I've still had some people in my class not quite sure about what to do. If you've already started your assignment, you can find information in here to double check whether you are on the right track so that you can be sure that you're going to get a good result for your assessment task. We're going to start looking at the samurai house label diagram, and that's this part here, and most of you should have started this or even finished it as part of your homework. If you haven't, I really would like to show you a couple of little things where you can maybe start to find some information. But first of all, I'd like to show you the kind of buildings that they had at the time, not just the samurai buildings, but the buildings in general. It's really important for you to get an understanding of these because when it comes to evaluating the buildings in the game, you're going to want to be able to come and say, what did the buildings of the time look like? Because not all of the buildings are actually samurai houses. If we have a look for samurai houses, when we go in there are some sites with some information on there. There's not an overwhelming lot of information on samurai houses, but there is plenty for you to be able to use to get information for your assignment. So if we have a little bit of a look at some of these links, you can see that you can use the images as well as the text to be able to help you write your label. So have a look and see with your eyes, what can you spot about the materials and the way that they've built the house that can help you to label your diagram. If you have a little bit of a look here, further down, it talks about the samurais, and you can see here the samurai created their own style of house called Shoguns. So if we have a look, you can actually do a search on that and find out a little bit more about that style of house. So let's go and have a look and see what was a samurai house like. Is there any other information out there on samurai houses? So we can have a look at a couple of other websites to help you, and if you come along here, you'll be able to find even more information about our samurai houses. We're just waiting for them to load. So some on Wikipedia, and also some on this other site here on the Encyclopedia Britannica site. So just a reminder though, that your label diagram, if you look in the marking criteria, 5 marks of this 10 are for your diagram and 5 marks are for your labelling. So your labelling and giving specific information in your labelling, you probably want to be able to have at least five sentences of information in total, so 5 different sentences about 5 different features on your diagram. Okay, the next part is the part where people were seeming to be confused. This was, what do we mean by a game context overview? We want you to be able to tell us, when they made the game, what was the time period that they were trying to set the game to be in, and what was actually the historical event, or what was meant to be happening in the game at that time. To help you organise some of your information, we've created some organisers similar to what you would have used last year in Year 7. You don't need to use these, but what you'd be able to do is actually just print these out and write by hand the information that you find as you go along, so that you can keep that organised so that you can write your paragraphs a little bit easier. So where do you find the information? When we go here, you've got 2 links. The information is provided for you. So the first link that we have a look at is provided by the people who wrote the game, and they give you a little bit of an overview about when it was meant to happen. So you can read that, but that's probably not all the information you need. There's actually really good information on this link here to tell you exactly what it is that was meant to be happening in the game at that particular time in medieval Japan. Now be very careful to make sure that you use the links that were sent to you in that PDF document for the task, because people in my class were getting clawed out the other day because what they were doing was they were just typing in, and I'll show you what happens, they were just typing in websites, very, very slow today. They were just typing in Age of Empires 3, and you actually get a really different page if you load this page. And this page over here is not the information. It's not going to give you the information that you need. So make sure that it's not Age of Empires 3, but it's Age of Empires 3 with the Asian dynasties. You need to scroll down until you come to the information on campaigns, and you'll be able to see here that there's information about the Japanese campaign. So just reminding you, we want to look in there and say, when in Japan's history is the game set, and what is happening, what is the storyline, what is meant to be going on in the history of Japan as they present it to you in the game. So over we go, and we look at the context that's shown in the campaign for you. You can see that there's specific information about the Tokugawa shogunate, about things like the event was meant to be things to do with the siege of Osaka. What were they trying to do? They were trying to storm castles. Which people were involved? So we're talking about a particular daimyo, a particular lord, Daimyo Mododara. We also are seeing that we're given some particular time periods that was meant to happen in, okay? So this paragraph here is really what you want to be focusing on between this and the information from the game developer to write your information for Part B. Now be very, very careful, because if all of you are writing from this exact same paragraph, us teachers will know immediately if you've copied bits out. So don't come in here and focus on just highlighting bits and pieces and cutting and pasting, because we will know exactly that you've done that. So it's really important for you to think about using tools like this to just write down the specific words so that you don't get caught out copying and pasting information from that website. Now over here we have some other information for Part B, and that's for you to be able to record your information about the fighting units. So remember, we've covered feudal system in class, and remembering the order of the society, and you need to be thinking about the information that they give you about the people that are in the game, or the different classes of fighters that are in the game. Where would they actually fit? Where would they fit in that hierarchy? So where do they belong in here? And where would you put them? So we know that the samurai has a class on its own, but what about the Yabusami? What about if we have a look at the Yumi or the Naginta riders? Where would they belong? And that's what you need to include in this Part 3, or in probably a separate paragraph. So you really want to be looking at 1 to, at the most, 2 paragraphs about the history and the time period and what was happening, and then a second paragraph about the different fighting units and where they would go in the society. That's all you need to do for that bit, and you've been given all of the information to be able to do it. So the last part of the assignment is for you to go through and say, historically, this game, Age of Empires 3, that was meant to be set in medieval Japan, which is the time when Japan was under the Shoguns, the information in the game and the setting of the game, is that actually historically accurate? So this is where it's important that you're going to be looking at different aspects of the game and trying to make an assessment about whether they were accurate or not. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of what that means. Now, if I come back here, I'll show you that we've actually got for you slides in the PowerPoint, or if you print them out, where you can write down why these things are historically accurate or why they are not. There might even be times where the information that you are finding, where that information might be partly accurate but not entirely accurate. So you can record here, and there's one for each different section. So here's one for buildings, one for the landscape, one for historical events. So if you print those sheets out, that will give you a framework for being able to write your report. And essentially what you would have is you would have a paragraph on each one of these slides. With the information that you're recording would turn into a paragraph in your report. So coming back up to buildings, what we are looking for, why the buildings would be or would not be historically accurate or reflective of that historical period at that time. So how would I go about finding that? In your assignment, we've given you a link. It's back on the first page. where it talks about the actual game. Now remember, you don't even need to play the game to be able to do this assignment. All you need to do is be able to have a little bit of a look at the features of the game as it's being played by somebody else. So if you have a look, the first link is probably the better link to have a look at, because the second one talks a lot about how to actually play the game. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and see if we can't find a little bit of the buildings. So we can see here are some simpler buildings. We can see some of the buildings actually going up. Are these buildings similar to the kind of buildings that we were seeing when we had a look at those images of buildings before? What kind of materials are they actually making those buildings out of? So you can have a look as they're going up. Does it look like they're making them out of brick? Does it look like they're making them out of timber? What does it look like they're making them out of? If we go back and have a little bit of a look at our pictures of medieval Japan buildings, that will show you that's what the buildings of the time look like. And if we go back to the game, we can say, did the buildings actually look like that at the time? And that's what we want you to record. Do those buildings in the game look historically accurate, or don't they? When you have a look through the other part of the task for part C, you'll need to go through and for the historical events, work out whether they were historically accurate or not. So you might remember that in the information about the campaign, we saw things like they were talking about a siege of Osaka. So you might actually need to go and do a search and find out, was there actually a siege of Osaka, and did what happened, if it happened, did what happened actually happen the way that they try and show it in the game as being happening? Is that what actually happened? Is that not what happened? Is the whole thing made up? That's what we're wanting you to find out. So when you go and have a little bit of a look at the information on the events, that's what we want you to cover there. The information on the landscape. You'll remember in class that we talked a lot about the fact that Japan was in a very mountainous region, that they had a lot of volcanoes, and that they had a limited amount of land to grow crops in. So does it look like that in the game? Does the game reflect what we knew to be true about the historical time that was medieval Japan? Have a little bit of a look. Remember, they were fighting over land to grow crops in so that they could actually have lots of food to eat. So does the game actually show you a good representation of what was happening in history or not? The last part of the game, or the last part of part C, is you need to actually write an explanation of what you think the game does in teaching us about medieval Japan. So when we talk about, is it valuable to historians and is it valuable to building historical understanding, we want you to say, does that particular game teach us about medieval Japan and what was happening in that time? So here's another place where you can record information. And if you have a little bit of a look, when we talk about historical understanding, we mean, can we make sense of the past? Does this game, Age of Empires 3, Asian Dynasties Japan, does it help us make sense of what was going on in medieval Japan? Does it help us build an awareness of what happened in medieval Japan? So here's some information where you have to actually come up with this yourself. There's no way that you can actually find this information by researching on the internet. We need you to make a judgment about these things. So an idea might be, you might be able to talk about, does it give us some historically accurate information to help us understand more about that time period? You want to think about, what are the problems with the game in teaching us about that period? Are there any drawbacks? Are there any limitations in the game in being able to help us understand about that? So don't forget, when you're putting this part together, you're putting together a report, and if it was me, I would probably use some headings to present that information, because it'll make it a lot easier to be able to set out my work and put it together. So very best of luck, Year 8, with your task. And if you have any trouble, by all means, you can email your teacher. We'll see you next week. Bye.